Well, good morning to the APU community. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so delighted that you are in our company and you've taken time out to be a part of this important conversation where we have the opportunity to learn from many of our Black men who are men of distinction at APU. And I'm really excited about this conversation, and I think you're going to walk away encouraged, inspired, um, and moved by the lived experiences, the observations that our panelists will share generously during our conversation. Um, so we welcome you to this conversation. It's actually entitled "A Seat at the Table: A Conversation with APU Black Men." This experience is hosted by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Division, which includes our Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity, our Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence, and the Office of Military and Veteran Services. It's no coincidence that we're having this conversation in February, noted as Black History Month. This is the time that we honor the culture, the contributions, the inventions, the intellection, the creativity, the heritage of Black people around the world, but specifically in our nation. And so we have an opportunity to glean from the lived experiences and perspectives of some of our esteemed panelists today. And so again, we thank you for taking time out to be a part of this conversation. Before we move forward, I would like to extend acknowledgments. We see so many faculty and staff, so many of our colleagues in student affairs and student services that are joining us for this conversation. It's so encouraging that you're here. We're excited to have members of the President's Cabinet, Dr. Megan Prosser, Chief of Staff in the Office of the President. Delighted to have Dr. Shino Simons present, Dr. Don Davis, and so many other leaders across the institution who are making a huge impact and definitely advancing the vision of APU becoming a premier Christian university for this culture and time. So thankful for leaders, faculty, staff, students, even some of our academic deans like Dr. Bobby Duke. So honored that you have taken time out to be a part of this conversation. Please know that we do not take your time and your presence for granted. Um, so before we move forward with introductions of the panelists, because we want to reserve the majority of our time to engage in conversation with these men who come from different places across the nation. Some have actually lived in international countries. They all have a very diverse background. Obviously, there's that cultural theme in terms of how we identify as Black men and how we're navigating this nation, this climate, as well as our institution as a whole. But you're going to see that all of them have a very diverse background and lived experience. One thing that we would like to share before we get into conversation, um, each individual is very unique, even though we have commonalities and similarities in terms of culture, perhaps, and values and select experiences. By no means do we feel that what we share is applicable to all Black men. And so, by no means do we want to generalize perhaps remarks that we share in our conversation, but we still want to assign weight and value to what is shared. And so, we want to share that with you at the beginning of our time. Before we proceed, um, uh, I would like to open us up in prayer. And then I want to share a unique poem with you, and then you'll hear the introductions directly from our panelists. But let's pray together. God, thank you for this time that we have together. We are blown away by your abiding grace, your presence in our lives, your creativity in designing each of us with unique perspectives, lived experiences, deposited strengths that you place within us. And Father, we praise you for your creativity, for your majesty, for your greatness. Um, God, I'm so grateful for the men who have been generous and gracious to serve on this panel to courageously share their thoughts with our community. And I pray that you rest favor on them. God, I'm so grateful for our colleagues and students who have taken time out to be a part of this experience, to learn, um, and to be advocates for our diverse demography of students at APU, and to take that perspective even beyond APU, and to think about ways that we employ that in our respective um, communities and across our efforts to affect the climate of this nation. And so we give you praise for the discussions that will transpire, and we thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Would love to read this quote to you. It's coined by Michael McKenzie Sr., and it's entitled "A Black Man." Do not look into my face and see the color of my skin and not see the content of my character. Do not look into my history and see the darkness of my past and not see the brightness of my future. Do not look at the losses of my mistakes and not see the profits of my achievements. Do not look at the distance I have yet to travel and not see the origin from which I've come. Do not look at the foolishness of my youth and not see the wisdom of my older age. Do not look at the poverty of my family and not see the riches of its love. Do not look at the child I once was and not see the Black man I have become. It's no mistake. Listen, the role of Black men historically in this country is undeniable. Um, and so today we center the Black man's voice and experience. We extend affirmation and value to these men who have graciously and willingly decided to be a part of this conversation. So as you hear their introductions, I really compel you to telepathically affirm them, be able to receive what they share. And again, we thank you and we thank them. So at this time, we will start with our introductions.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Malachi Smith. I am from Chicago, born and raised. I am a senior at APU, studying marketing and entrepreneurship, and I actually run a 3D printing company that is from mind to matter 3D printing and design. So I pretty much do product development and rapid prototyping for several small businesses.
Thank you, Malachi. Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, y'all. My name is Max Wilson. I'm a senior here at APU. I am originally from Denver, Colorado, and I am a double major in psychology and honors humanities and a double minor in biblical studies and Christian ministries. I'm also a multi-ethnic leadership scholar, and I have planned to attend Emory University for my Master of Divinity in the fall.
It's great. Congratulations, by the way, Max.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
How y'all doing, everybody? My name is Phillip Barnes. Born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania. I am a senior in psychology. I actually got one more semester to go. I also work as a behavioral therapist for children who fall on the spectrum. So
yeah, that's great. Phillip, so good to see you.
Always
it's not good to see that jersey.
You know
not
what?
Good to see that jersey. You know this is Dodger Nation, man.
Okay.
Good to see you, Phillip. Glad you're joining.
Always, sir. Always.
All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcos. I'm born in San Diego, but I was raised in Mexico, so I'm Mexican for sure. And I'm married, 7 months, so it's new. It's new.
Great.
I did my undergrad at APU in Christian ministries, and then I continued my education at APU doing my master's in divinity. I'm in my 3rd year, and I'm an intern at the Campus Pastors Ministries office, and I'm a pastoral intern at a church called Living Hope Church, and I'm also a mentor at the Bukhari program.
It's awesome. Thank you, Marcos. So glad you're with us.
Hello, everyone. Antonio Mouzon, first generation college student. Was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York. Then I shot over to Texas and then overseas to Germany for a little while. And then I ended up in the most random place, Dubuque, Iowa, where I received my undergrad and my master's degree. And now I'm currently in the PhD program of higher education here at Azusa Pacific.
That's great. Good to see you, Antonio. What a journey, man. Jamaica, Queens to Iowa. How does it happen?
How does it happen?
Well, look. I so appreciate you, gentlemen, for participating in this conversation. I want to start off in an unconventional way. I know we have a list of questions, by the way, thanks to our members of our community who submitted questions through the RSVP process. But guys, we met on Monday just to discuss the overall flow for this event. And we ended up having a pretty robust conversation about how should we dress for this event. Right. And I mean, we talked through the flow pretty expeditiously, but it became a pretty substantive conversation. And so I want to ask you, in your estimation, is there an underlying theme or unspoken reality for Black men that makes a simple question such as, how should we dress, a serious dilemma? Let me pose that out to the group.
I do want to say I am really jealous. Phillip brought out his 2 chains. I don't
You know what?
I'm gonna go ahead and tuck mine in because my grandma gave me my chain, right? But
We out here. I got mine too. You know what I'm saying?
I was really actually surprised of how we really had to just take a moment,
Yeah,
to even consider how do we want to dress for this event, right? I think about some of the most influential people in my life, even professors as an undergrad, and I think some of the most influential people were people who were part of my culture, and a part of that culture was, a part of how I dressed and expressed myself through the clothes that I wore. But that is not a part of the culture of higher education, and so we do, among the other many things that we have to just consider as we prep ourselves to be scholars and effective Black men in this world. I mean, dress is one thing that we do have to just think about. How are we going to be perceived? Because the world is full of all these stereotypes that already condition people's belief system, and those conditions can affect how they can receive us.
yeah.
So it was just, I did have to take a moment to sit back, like, wow, we have to really consider a number of things,
Yeah,
even before we walk out the house.
yeah,
Do God's work.
yeah. That's good. That's good. Other thoughts?
For me and my family, my dad grew up in Austin, Texas, and my grandma grew up on a border town that was on the border of Arkansas and Texas. That was actually under segregation. And so when she left and moved to Austin, the family cultural mentality was very much make sure that you are like in tip top shape, make sure that you have the best possible education, best possible school, so that way you show up and you show out.
Yeah.
That way you can like uplift your community that you can represent.
Yeah.
And so it was funny, because in various events growing up, my dad was like, hey, like you're dressed like this, but you need to add this, this, and this, because you need to make sure that you're like the best dressed in the room. And there was one time where I got invited to be on the homecoming royalty my senior year of high school. And I came down with just like a button-up shirt, and my dad was like, go back up. And so there's definitely a much more of a mentality of like people will see you, people automatically see you, people will judge you before you have the chance to say anything.
Yeah.
And so before they can do that, you need to make sure that you're dressed in a way where they will perceive you in a light that will uplift the community. So that's how I was raised, and that was my little segment of the Black culture.
Yeah. It is that mix of being conscientious of some of the stereotypes that exist and how do we manage impressions, right? But also, man, how do we be authentic too, right? And it is holding those things in the balance. Phillip, I saw you leaning forward.
I was about to stop you because, in all honesty, Dr. K, that's exactly what it is. when I walk in and I could look exactly like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
I present something, that may not always be considered positive to people who might be looking at me. You know what I mean? They might see the chains and the jersey and all of that. And I decided, I got some dapper stuff. I could have came and did the Dr. K too, you know what I mean? But what I really wanted to do was come on to a set where I am speaking to esteemed Black men, and I am speaking in a intellectual fashion, but I look as though I don't embody any of those principles. You know what I mean? And I think that it's important for us to see that you can dress like Marcos, for instance, and be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But then there's no reason why you can't dress like somebody like me and be taken seriously as well.
Absolutely. That's good. That's well shared.
That's hugely based on the narrative that media portrays of Black males.
Yeah.
And I think that there's huge value in being able to live comfortably in your culture and still be a scholar and still share intellectual thoughts.
Yes.
A thought you shared, Maxwell, was interesting to me because growing up for me, it was a rarity for any one of my friends to have a male role model in our homes.
Yeah.
And so I didn't experience those conversations of how to dress. I really got exposed to that once I got to higher education. And I dove into a culture that was not a part of my culture. And I had to kind of learn as a first gen, conversations that were not held in my household. It was more of a survival atmosphere versus, the way we dressed and the messages that send. So I thought that was an interesting point you brought up too.
Yeah, Antonio, something interesting that you were mentioning. For me, it was interesting because my dad passed away when I was 16. So it was just those formative years where you get to know, some of the things that you were mentioning. So I think I missed a lot of those conversations that I could have had with my dad. And since my mom is Mexican, there's some things that just my mom couldn't understand culturally. And so it was a very hard conversation.
Yeah.
Many times the way I wanted to dress, my mom would think that was, in other words, let's be honest here, tacky, right? And so it was like, this is not tacky, Mom. This is me, right? And I think that even within the home atmosphere, I was in many ways had to defend what it looked like, to be African American, but at the same time, what it looked like to be Mexican.
Yeah.
And so for my mom, my mom saw me and she'll always say, "But mijo, you're Mexican." But I was like, "Yeah, Mom, but I'm also Black." So there was just this hard part for me. So there's moments where, I like to dress up, just like Phillip. I wouldn't wear that jersey. That's not that kind of jersey that I would wear.
well, most people in Southern California wouldn't wear that.
Yeah,
no, they would not.
But there's something.
You looking good, Doc.
But there's something about for me, I remember I used to dress up because I was always afraid to be perceived something different. But then at a certain point, I learned that I like to dress up this way because I just like to feel professional. It has nothing to be with anything that other people might perceive or anything like that. I just like it. I like it. Sometimes I like to feel sharp. Sometimes, I like to feel, wearing a blazer, I like to feel good sometimes. But at the same time, that doesn't take away that there's days I want to wear a nice hat, take out the chain and dress up nice. You know what I'm saying? Because you can still look sharp with your dress. And it's all about, as what Dr. Keith was saying in that poem, is don't look at my color, look at my character.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important when we're having these conversations about how we dress.
Yeah.
It's about, don't look at what I'm wearing, look at who I am.
That's good. That's good. I'm telling you, this could be a panel discussion in itself. Good. Because there is a deeper complexity beyond just what we wear. And it's really the weight of being conscientious of how we have to govern ourselves in spaces that don't necessarily culturally understand or have exposure of who we are. For example, I've talked to brothers on campus about being conscientious of, as a Black man, of my posture, of my proximity in terms of other people who may not have exposure in terms of being around a person of color. Um, it even involves, I think, the conversation of code switching, right? So some of the strategic, nuanced, socialized behaviors that we have to employ um, to fully engage, and in some cases, I would even say for the purpose of survival, right?
Definitely.
And so I really appreciate what you gentlemen have shared. Let me ask another question, and we'll get to your experience at APU, but I think it's critical for us to think about um, your life experience even before APU. So at what age did you become conscious of race and how it intersected with your life experience? And what were some of those observations or realizations that you had?
Gotcha. I'd say for me, um, when it came to, I'd say probably about 4 or 5.
Mm,
I think initially my interactions with race were primarily cultural.
mm,
I feel like more of the time, like when you're early in elementary school, it's more just this group of people dress this way. They may speak vaguely different. Have different mannerisms. And it wasn't until I think maybe I was about 9 or 10 where I started to realize or just see the part of the divisive nature as it relates to race. With people going into their own groups, and then me working professionally as an actor in my youth,
mm,
starting to see just 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 the majority of the roles that were given to me, and how they portrayed
mm.
certain negative
Yeah,
uh, stereotypes that I wasn't as familiar with until I started working professionally.
yeah,
To where you think of, when you think of an actor, it's like, oh, I want to be, I want to be a doctor, I want to be the cowboy, I want to be the love interest, all these things,
yeah,
and from 10 to 15, 70% of the serious roles, you're getting troubled youth, you know,
yeah,
uh, juvenile going wrong, but wants to do right. You
right,
get these things,
right.
and then you start to realize how uh, how your race affects just essentially like how certain people would like to use your cultural capital. That's
Yeah,
what I say.
yeah. Thank you, Malachi. It's good. Other
That's dope.
thoughts? What age did you
Um,
become conscious of your race
I
and
would
how it
say for
intersected with your life?
me, it was really similar to Malachi. Like it was around what, first grade, so kindergarten, first grade, 4 or 5. And my experience was, I went to a school that was pretty split. I lived in the city, and especially in my neighborhood, I grew up in the projects, so it was predominantly black, but it was
Mhm.
intermixed with like native Africans who had just immigrated, and people from the Middle East that had just immigrated, you know what I mean? So we were a melting pot in that aspect, but there was not a lot of white people. So I get to school, and 4 or 5, so I'm energetic, you know what I mean? I'm all over the place. And I am the one getting not argued. I am the one getting yelled at for my conduct, and I have my white friend here, and he's not being spoken to at all.
Mm,
And so my report card comes. I have straight A's, but then I have a D in conduct. So I go and ask him what he has in conduct. He has an A. Mom, why does he have an A and I have a D?
yeah,
And then the first question my mom asked me, and I don't remember a lot from my youth, but the first question she asked me is, what color was he? You know what I mean? And so to think that
yeah,
my mom is a dark-skinned black woman who grew up in the 60s and the 70s. And so, you know how that has affected her in her thought processes. And the
yeah,
first question she thought to ask me was, what color was he? When I told her that he was white, she explained it to me, but not in a way that I could really grasp until I got much older.
yeah,
She was like, "You
yeah,
are different because of the color of your skin, because of the way you look in relation to that child. And my teacher was white too. Because you look differently, they're going to treat you differently. So you have to act twice as good to get what he got. At that year, I don't think I got higher than a C in conduct, but I got straight A's and everything else. So that was really my introduction to, oh, okay,
Yeah.
because I look different, they're treating me different. That's really early to
Yeah.
have to think
Yeah.
and go through those things to understand that, the color of my skin, just simply the color of my skin, which is something I didn't choose, which is something I cannot change, affects how people view me, even at an age as young as 4 or 5.
Yeah. View and even evaluate, right? And
Yes.
evaluate you. Yeah.
I can definitely relate. I think my experience was around 5 or 6, and I remember this distinctly. I had a best friend named Billy, and Billy was a little white kid, and he was, we would ride bikes together in the complex, run around, play tag,
Yeah.
games that 5 and 6 year olds would do. We didn't have too much supervision either. I mean, it was a complex, so it was smaller, and Billy would always want to come over my house and play, and we just hung out. But I would never get invited to his house. And so one day I said, "Hey Billy, like let's go to your house. I don't want to be at my house today. Let's go to your house." And he always had reservations. And I remember we got in
Mhm.
front of his house, and he told me to wait outside. And he went inside, and I saw his dad pass the door, and I heard him yell out, "That N word is not coming in my house."
Mm.
And I'm 5 or 6 years old, and it was crazy because anytime I heard the N word, it was in a different context. I've heard it in movies,
Yeah.
where people were greeting each other, and
Yeah.
it was not looked at as a negative thing. But in that moment, that man had so much hate and animosity in his tone, and as a little kid, I was so confused.
Yeah.
And so I remember going back home, and I explained what happened to my mom and Billy. I mean, Billy couldn't even come outside with me anymore after that. And she was furious. And we had that conversation, and she kind of exposed me to the world that we live in,
Yeah.
and how, equity is not, really a thing in our lives, and we have to face things, and especially, me being a Black male. So yeah, very early age.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. It's interesting that all of you are able to recount very defined moments that have stayed with you for a lifetime, right? Um, and really gives you a glimpse of some of the horrors that's associated with our national climate.
Yeah.
Um, and you experience these things literally 18, 20 years ago, but we still see reflections and uh, of that happening even within our current culture. So I really appreciate all of you for being transparent and generous and sharing those experiences. So here's another one. Did all of you did you always know you were going to college? Who were the people? What were the circumstances that led you to embrace the idea of going to college and even seeing yourself as like an emerging scholar, to embrace that designation and to own it?
For me, I think I was the only person to nod. In my story, it really starts with my great grandfather
Yeah.
On the Black side of my family, because again, Texarkana, border of Texas and Arkansas, segregation. And so what he told my grandmother all the time growing up is like, I clean white people's toilets so that way you can go to college. And so it's consistent messaging. She was dirt poor, really had no money. The home she lived in would truly be considered a shack. And so she left. She went and got her college degree with the help of her father. And keep in mind, that's like years upon years of saving, not just a decision, not just a moment. She met my grandfather, she married him, and then he was a coach, a sports coach, and then she was a teacher. And same story, where they worked multiple jobs each. My dad's family actually cleaned the Austin Public Library at night. So not just like my grandma or my grandpa, it was like the entire family. So that way they could have enough money to pay for school, pay for the bills, get them the opportunities that they needed. And then even then, when my dad ended up going to college, he actually had to get offered a scholarship from a wealthy family that attended his school and really believed in his potential. Yeah. And then that set me up in a position where like the mindset was like college is the only path because it is something that has been built across 3 generations of your family. And so now you carry it on and you're going to benefit from that. And you're not going to leave behind the family. You're not going to leave behind the culture. That's something where you're going to take it and express it out and help other people along the way. So for me, it was a long-term generational cultural mindset that was built into the family.
Yeah. You're literally standing on the shoulders of some giants within your family.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Max. That's good.
Yeah. For me, it's a little bit different. So I speak Spanish. So I speak both languages, and it was a struggle going to school. And they look at me and they think that I just only speak English, and teachers couldn't understand why I would write backwards. Because of my Spanish, you write a little bit backwards, or some words are interchangeable. So sometimes they couldn't understand, so I would be failed. But another thing that I realized that it was a struggle for me is that I was always seen with the identity of sports. I felt like when I did sports, all the teachers liked me. All the teachers somehow, some way, I was passing classes until the day I tore my ACL. I remember that year when I tore my ACL, my report card came with F's. And after that, I felt like I had no value. I felt like I had nothing to give. And that's when I felt like I lived into the idea that I was dumb. I was not smart. And I started feeling like I had nothing to offer, nothing, nothing just to give. It was just a very interesting change of my life, especially when my dad passed away. My dad went to college. I have an aunt. She's in Kansas City, Missouri. She got her doctorate. So they were part of the civil rights movement. They got education. So it was something new. But when my dad passed away, my mom only spoke Spanish. My mom couldn't help me at all. My mom never went to school. She went to first grade, and after that she was pulled out because she's the first. She's one of 11 kids, and she's the oldest, so she had to go to the fields and work. So my mom would always try to help me, but she couldn't help me because she didn't understand what was going on with me. I couldn't understand what was going on with me, and until I was in and it is a little bit over, but until I was in community college one semester, I saw all my friends in that same place. And I said to myself, I don't want to be here because I know if I'm stuck here, I'm never going to leave. And I'm going to live up to what I have always believed I was. And so I said, I need to leave. And I left, I went to APU and I left. But that was the journey. I was afraid because I felt like the only thing that I had a leverage in was in sports. And I had a chance. But when that was gone, I didn't know what to stand on. And I think that was the hardest thing for me. And that was just an experience that I hold dearly to be reminded, to tell other, brothers and sisters that that sports is not the only way.
That's right. That's right.
Good message.
It's good.
For me, I come from a background where my father was incarcerated the majority of my childhood, and currently my mother's incarcerated. So statistically, I should not be in a PhD program. I shouldn't be a professor at an institution, but I am. And just through that, for me, it was the relationships that were built, especially in high school for me, that allowed me to shift my belief system. In my life, I see more people get in trouble by the law than actually go off to college. It was never a conversation at the dinner table. It was never a conversation in the house. And so my thoughts, my belief was college was not made for people who look like me. I didn't know anybody who went to college who looked like me. My belief system was college were for people named Bartholomew with a slick haircut to the side and some gel. And that was literally my belief, as a young 17, 16-year-old kid. But in high school, I had a coach, and he was a white male coach. And there's a quote that says, look at a man as he is and he only becomes worse. But if you look at a man as what he could be, then he becomes what he should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly how my high school coach looked at me. He saw past the facade of my behaviors and how I carried myself. And he really took the time and patience to connect with my belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And he always told me, reminding me of my strengths and my skills. And the day that changed my life, that gave me the courage to even apply to college, was my high school graduation and take photos with everyone. And he was the last person I wanted to take photos with. And I said, Coach, I'm the first to graduate in my family. My parents never, graduated high school. And so, aren't you proud of me? And he had his glasses on, high school coach gear. So he had the short shorts, the glasses on, buzz cut, And he just stared at me for about 30 seconds, the longest 30 seconds ever. And in that moment, he took off his glasses and he looked at me with those baby blue eyes. And it was the first time I seen a grown man cry. And he said, I've always believed in you, and you are going to make waves in this world.
Yeah.
You can do it. And just with that moment,
Yeah.
that alone gave me the courage to shift my own belief system of what I was constantly exposed to. And I applied to one institution just for that one moment. And that one institution said, welcome to Iowa. But it just goes to show the power of focusing on our strengths and the power of relationships.
Yeah.
In relation to shift in some of our limiting beliefs that society places on us sometimes.
Sure. That's so good, Antonio. I'm glad you shared that. The power of relationships for those of us who have influence, which is everybody that's on this call, how impactful an affirming word can be.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking to the potential and the vision that's associated with a student, no matter what their background is, like that's very, very powerful. And even providing that challenge to you. I mean, that was a very defining moment for you. That's so good, man. That's good. Okay, so look, you gentlemen come from all over the place, Chicago and Iowa and Pennsylvania and Denver and San Diego. How in the world did you end up at APU?
Faith.
Because I listened to you brothers, and man, I know you could have went to other institutions. You guys, your lives are saturated with incredible purpose and capacity. How did you end up at APU? So talk briefly, just kind of highlight your journey and how you landed at APU. I would appreciate that. And maybe a follow-up question. Were there any challenges that you faced as you transitioned to APU and you were trying to, acclimate to the ethos at our institution? And how did you mitigate those challenges? So how did you end up at APU? Obviously by choice, but I would love for you to share a little more detail with our audience. Did you encounter any challenges as you integrated into the community, and what were some of the resources? Whether internal or external, how did you mitigate those challenges?
Gotcha. So yeah, I'd say for me, ending up at APU, I initially didn't want to go to college. I was acting from 5 to 15, and it was important to my mother that I was still, in school versus doing the tutoring. And so at that point, with me going to school and always doing makeup work and yada yada, school felt like, oh, this is getting in the way of my career. I want this to be over as soon as possible, But it wasn't until my senior year I did a business plan competition and an entrepreneurship course in high school that where I felt like I really got so much value, and I was introduced to a great network. And within that, in terms of coming to APU, basically where I was in Chicago, where I know people and where I grew up in Chicago, has never been a very motivating environment for me. I feel like it's a lot of negativity. It's a lot of crabs in the barrel mentality. And And, definitely a lot of love there too. But there was a lot of things that where I felt like for the things that I wanted to achieve, I didn't see anyone around me doing them. And my environment wasn't motivating to me. And
Yeah.
so from 10 to 15, before I moved back to Chicago, I was out here in California pursuing an acting career. And that just opened my mind to so much in terms of what I can achieve. And it just really made me feel like, dreams are really obtainable because of some of
Yeah.
the successes I had.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of associated California with opportunity and just a drastically different environment. And so I knew I wanted to come back there. And then I knew with the entire family being back in Chicago, I would need to center myself and I felt like a Christian environment would help stimulate that through the people I met.
Wow.
So that's what brought me to APU.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Malachi.
I definitely agree. I also first generation college student. When I graduate, I'll be the first person in my entire family, not just in like my immediate family, but in
Yeah.
the entire family to graduate. You know what I mean?
Mm.
My environment also was equally not stimulating. And I only saw one way out, and it wasn't college.
Mhm.
It was the military. So I did the military. I joined the Air Force at 21 after working pretty much every job you could work. Joined. I did that for 10 years total. And then I got out, and they don't give you a lot of resources when you get out. They kind of let you go. You know what I mean? Like in the truest sense, like they tell you, oh, we're gonna give you this, but give you help, and that to be honest, they don't give you anything. All they do is send you to this course where they fire hose you with information for 8 hours, and then once you come home, all you do is get the checklist signed off and you're done. So
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about college. So I got the idea from a friend to go to college, and it wasn't actually to even go to college. It was to get the VA so that I wasn't homeless. Get the VA money. So I got the VA money, and then I was in college, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. Like you know what I mean? Like it's really stoking, the fervor in me for knowledge, because I've always been the type of person to read and things like that. So
Yeah.
I took a psychology course, and that was pretty much it. How I got to APU was I was at the VA, and there was this advocate at the VA who was helping me with my VA stuff, and he asked me was I in college. I told him yeah, and he recommended APU to me.
Wow.
And first he asked me, that I believe in God, and we got to talking about God because I'm very spiritually centered, and he was like, you should check out APU.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did. And my first day here, I met with the psych department. They got me all set up for classes. And one thing that I noticed is I was the only Black man in the room. And that was something that I was like, is this the right school for me?
Yeah.
Because I'm not used to being in environments where I'm the only Black person in the room, especially the only Black man. And
Yeah.
it has been like that through pretty much throughout my career. I've had maybe one or two other ones. Shout out to a couple of my classmates, but for the most part, it's just been me in classes, and so that was definitely something that I had to adjust to. You know what I mean? And something that really opened my eyes to say that uh, I could have been a statistic, but instead of being a statistic, I am trying to help myself and my community so that none of us are statistics anymore.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's helpful.
Oh, sorry.
That's really good. Let's get one more response.
For me, thank you for sharing, Philip and Malachi. I actually did the opposite of Antonio. I decided that winter was no longer the thing for me. And so I fled. I fled winter to the eternal summer that is Southern California. No Iowa for me. I literally, no joke, I drew a line through the United States and I was like, all the schools underneath this line are like good to go. Like no way, right? So not to sound shallow, but that was definitely a primary motivating factor. But it was actually a little bit controversial in my family because my dad actually went to Stanford through all the investments of his community and his parents and the generations, like I was mentioning earlier. So my brother went to APU and then I followed in his footsteps. I tried my best not to. But when he went, it caused consternation because it was like, why did we invest so much for your children to not go to a school that's like academically like Stanford or Duke or Emory or Princeton, right? But at the same time, I really felt APU was the best place for me to go. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to a Christian school or a non-Christian school, because I didn't want to be in a bubble. But at the same time, like through my process of like discerning what God wanted for me, I discerned that a Christian education where I was being formed in a way where I would be the best possible Christian in whatever field I was going to, that's what I wanted. And also APU being a missional school, you don't have to sign a statement of faith. So that was also a really big factor. But I also love the size. I love the culture. I love the mentality. It's much more diverse than where I grew up in Colorado. The suburb that I live in, it's called Highlands Ranch. And it used to be right around 90% white, but now it's probably like 85%. So for me, growing up in a multicultural family, I was like, peace. But interestingly enough, at APU, and again, just the way my family culture operates, it was very much a mentality of like, you need to be able to like function in white culture. So it's very intentional what schools you went to. And I see that mentality in other aspects of Black culture as well. I have a friend whose parents gave her like the most white name possible because they didn't want her being discriminated against when she applied for loans, when she applied for schools, when she applied for jobs. So that's definitely a mentality. So, you know, I had a lot of training in that regard. Half my family is white. But coming to APU, I think I really learned that no matter how much work I do to fit in and culturally engage, there's still something about me that just like will not fit the mold that is given to me or presented to me, even like in leadership positions, in expectations of authority figures, especially in the administration. I think there was a lot of an expectation of like how I should act and shouldn't act. And my passion, I think, was misinterpreted oftentimes for being uppity, or even a word that was used for me was aggressive. Another word that was used for me was intense. And so I think that was when I really learned, I just like, this is my school. I do belong here. I do have a place here, but there's something off about that fit. No matter how hard I try.
Yeah, I think you're putting your finger on something, Max. I mean, definitely the institution has strengths, right, in terms of our diverse demography of students. Right, I know we referenced the stat of, you know, over 60% of our student body identifies students of color, but I think in this next iterative journey that we're on, that's informed by Renewal, our university strategic plan, we're asking questions like, how do we start to co-create a climate where all of our students, no matter what their background is, feel a sense of belonging? And I think all of us on this call, we know sense of belonging is more than just wearing an APU cap or wearing a t-shirt. It's feeling this connection, not just academically and intellectually, but culturally, with faculty, with peers. And that's the journey that lies ahead for us. Phillip even referenced a good point of the underrepresentation of Black men at APU and just in higher ed in general, right? I think some of us, our eyes light up when we see another brother walk on campus. Like, man, it's like it's such a rare experience.
Don't let them be in your class.
What's that, Malachi?
Oh, no, I was saying, and don't let them be in your class.
That's right. That's right. I'm sitting next to you. We're going to engage. You might get dapped. Like, what? You hungry? I got snacks. What? You know what I mean? Everything. Right?
And by no means are we minimizing the importance of having connections with others from other, you know, diverse ethnic backgrounds or cultural backgrounds, because I know all of us, we value that. But it's also critical to be able to see individuals who look like you across the institution, right? Whether that's at the front of the classroom delivering the lecture, or that's reflected in the literature and scholarship that all students are reading, that expands the breadth of our knowledge. Like, all of that's very key, and it contributes to, I think all students experience the highest degree of belonging, and all of your comments kind of lead to that. So I want to segue because you guys, you've taken us there, and I appreciate you for being generous with your thoughts. So
Before you go to
how,
that, brother, can I have
yeah, yeah,
can I give a thought, one last thought real quick
yeah,
with
yeah. Go
this?
ahead,
Because I
Malachi.
feel like it relates to what we're saying. And I think it's important that like the APU leadership would hear this. In terms of like, you know, the challenges with the university
Yeah,
or just what I experienced, I feel like I recognized quickly, you know, just like even the first orientation week coming to APU that I've always felt like, uh, not that, like I never felt like I wasn't welcome. I
yeah,
never felt like I necessarily didn't belong there. Uh, but I did feel like in a way that it was that I was like tolerated and it was okay for me to be there. But I
mm,
never felt like that my culture was represented enough or like catered to.
yeah,
So from who I saw in the leadership positions, the alphas, the spiritual team, the music that was played at all the orientation events, it always felt like it's okay for you to be here, but there's still, I feel like there's definitely an idea of like what the model, you know, APU student looks like, you
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
well, so yeah, that's something that I feel like is important to acknowledge. And I definitely felt like even though there was some things that I wanted, that I was interested in, like alpha, like some of these different leadership positions, I felt like I didn't necessarily fit that mold and wouldn't mesh with that community.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So listen, our time is moving way too fast. You know, guys, we needed probably 2, 3 hours easily.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, so listen, on this call, we have administrators, we have faculty, staff, peers, um, who have taken time out. They want to hear about your experience, but they also want to learn specifically from you. In your estimation, how can APU develop that climate where Black men feel welcome? And Malachi, to feed off of your expressed thought,
Yeah.
where you feel like, hey, this is a place where I fit. Um,
Mhm.
like, how do we? What are some ideas, some thoughts that kind of come to mind based on your own lived experience at APU that you would generously share with our audience? And not trying to ask you to fix the problem, because that's really not your responsibility. That's really on administration, that's on faculty, that's on academic leadership for us to think through, how do we cultivate that climate? But I do believe as we do that, we should prioritize um, your qualitative experience as we go through this experience of becoming a thriving university of
Right.
choice, which is a grand initiative within the university strategic plan. So if you don't mind briefly kind of share some of your observations and suggestions with our audience.
It's a really, really great question, Dr. Hall. I think that it's extremely important that we focus on the internal versus the
Yeah,
external. And when
yeah,
I say that, I mean internally as people, as a human being. We a lot of times try to put band-aids over issues, and we try to implement, um, you know, courses, and we try to do a lot of superficial stuff, but we do
yeah,
not address as much as we should our own implicit biases, our own belief systems, our own unconscious thoughts when we interact with people from different cultures. And if we do not take time to become more self-aware of, what do I believe about this, what do I truly believe, what is happening on an unconscious
yeah,
level, then regardless of what systems are in place, you're still carrying that same mindset
yeah,
into these new systems. And so
yeah,
I would encourage us to have some very unique and maybe even sometimes challenging conversations to address our beliefs and our emotional intelligence in relation to interacting with people. The superficial, the external stuff, they are helpful, but I think a lot of the work needs to happen
yeah.
internally.
It's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antonio. That's good. Other thoughts?
I'll be as brief as possible so we can have everybody else share. But I think I hold three pillars to my experience in college very true. The first one is academics, and I think we need personally resources that can reflect students of color. And that is not only beneficial to Black students, but it adds rich material to the learning experiences of students of other cultures in APU. The second one is mentorship. Mentoring is key piece of the development of the student. And I think like for me personally, I have Dr. Koba Canales, Freddie Rivas, Wesley Parker Reed, and Dr. Boulogne. And they guided me through personal development, professional development, and discipleship as a Christ follower. And I had the confidence because of their support system, because of them being willing to help me and give me guidance. And they believed in me. So I believed in myself. And the third one is spiritual care. And faith is integral to our development as students. And the discipleship, spiritual growth, and emotional maturity in a Christian community enhances the belonging, comfortability, understanding of what it looks like to be part of Jesus' kingdom. And, and at the end of the day, my hope for Black men and women who are students at APU is to come out of school ready and fierce. I think that I want to come out fierce to do change in the world and to create impact. And I think that those are three things that I continue to hold and ask to present because I think that those are the things that we need.
Man, you trying to preach in that blue blazer, man.
Annie, I was just about to say that.
You and Antonio blessed us with your comments. That's good. All right, listen, we got 2 minutes, maybe a couple of more thoughts, and then we need to transition.
I'm a talker, so I'm gonna keep it real brief. Attend BSA events. There is an organization that is open to people exploring, hanging out with people who are African American and Black students. That's already like an area where it's like, it's just a cultural expression. It's a place where people hang out, get to know each other. I would say attend BSA events. Be intentional with the people who are in your classes. It's obviously different. Number one, because the school is online. Number two, with the football team being left behind in APU's past, that's really going to shift the demographics. But we all have a lot more access to diversity of cultures than we think. And so there's someone, when you walk into the class, you go, oh, like that's a person I wouldn't automatically think to like sit with, go and sit with them, strike up a conversation. Same thing on the trolley when we are back on campus. And then finally, I would say, really just validate. I think something that is very interesting that I've observed is people will, like, if I share a racist experience, almost the first thing that happens each and every time is like, oh, are you sure about that? Well, have you considered this perspective? Have you considered what my perspective was? And it's like, just believe us, because more likely than not, someone's telling the truth rather than lying. And you would want to believe us if we're trying to share something that's important and we're trying to give y'all feedback, as we would expect and want for ourselves. We would want you to believe before you started analyzing and picking apart our ideas. So BSA, sitting with people who you wouldn't normally think to sit with, and that's across culture. And then finally, the last thing that I said, that is
validation.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, that's good. Look, we gotta hit the pause button there, guys. We've got to find a way to pick back up on this conversation. But I want to thank all of you for being very gracious, very generous, and sharing your lived experience. You blessed us this morning. And so thank you so much. So special thanks to Max, Malachi, Phillip, Marco, Antonio. You're looking stylish, you're thoughtful. You make APU better, no doubt about it. So thank you so much for sharing with our community this morning. Hey, some real quick closing remarks for our participants. We obviously want to thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely share this recording in the next iteration of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion newsletter for you to consult. Perhaps you want to share with others. We'll also have some resources and some of the shared thoughts and ideas that these men brought to the table. We'll find a crystallized way to present those to you for your consideration. We want to remind you, on tomorrow, we have the virtual concert entitled Reimagine Music, that's starring J. Michael O'Neill. We've learned that we also have a special guest. Some of you have heard of Propaganda. So Propaganda will serve as the MC for the event tomorrow at 10:30. Listen, it's just live. We are not recording tomorrow's event. And so if you have a coffee meeting or if you got a Zoom, you need to go ahead and cancel that today so that you can join us for tomorrow. So J. Michael, he's going to walk us through a journey on the integral role that music has played in Black history and Black culture. The way that it's been used to tell story, to express the struggle, to evoke inspiration, to tell truth and love. And so you'll hear genres from the old Negro spirituals to jazz to hip hop to my favorite R&B, right, and gospel. You're going to get a little mix of all of those samplings on tomorrow. So join us. It's taking place via apu.edu/live. You can still RSVP for that event, but we're really looking forward to having a special time on tomorrow morning. Also, I want to extend special thanks to Stephanie Haskins, all of the work that she's done behind the scenes and coordinating this event. And then always, we appreciate our IMT team who make things happen on the technological front. So again, thank all of you for joining us. Special thanks to all of our brothers, our men of distinction. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and know that we're grateful for you. We appreciate you. And thanks for liberally sharing your wisdom with us. All right. That's all I have. Everybody, blessings to you. Enjoy your Thursday.
All righty, you too.
Actually, it's Wednesday. Why not saying Thursday? I'm already at the
I was just about to say, Dr. K, where are you at?
Hey, I'm so ready for the virtual concert. I'm trying to fast forward. Hey, blessings to you guys, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
You too.
All right, take care.
All right, y'all.